I want you to consider making the transition into entrepreneurship at some point. I'm telling you, fulfillment, I believe, comes from the ability to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, and in what fashion you want to do it. Because the only way you're going to get better is to accept your reality, which is, welcome to another episode of Some Underrated Podcast, where we help beginning and aspiring entrepreneurs become action takers and money makers. I am your host, Rollandelendu, and today's episode, I am going to be talking about starting a business. Is the effort worth the reward? All right, so if you are a new entrepreneur and thinking about starting a business this year, this episode is for you. So you don't want to go anywhere, stick around. Let's get right to it. All right, so I've made notes of my pros and cons for my pros and cons for starting a business, right? So that'd be, the cons would be like the effort and the process, basically the not so fun part of starting a business. And then the pros would obviously be the reward part, right? And so this episode is basically us exploring if what we put in is worth what we get out of entrepreneurship. All right. So obviously, if you're watching this video or you follow this podcast, you are either a beginning entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur, or you are tinkering with the idea of entrepreneurship. All right. So now, before we get into the pros and the cons, I just want to say that I don't think that in any human history that entrepreneurship has been this popular and this glamorized, right? Everywhere you look on social media, there is an entrepreneur with a Ferrari, a McLaren, a Lamborghini. They're flaunting cash. Everywhere you turn, there is, a coach. I'm not saying, there's anything wrong with that. I actually love the idea of coaching and mentorship, right? But I mean, there's so many of them out there. And if we go by social media standard, right? Or if we go by what we see on social media versus what the real stats say, I don't think that we should have that many people on social media claiming to be successful entrepreneurs who've done X, Y, Z. But I might be wrong. Again, this podcast is not entirely, well, when we state facts, but a lot of it is, in my opinion, my experience and my perspective, right? My point of view on entrepreneurship based off of my experiences. All right. So, but I just want to make the point that, like, today, entrepreneurship is more popular, more glamorized, but also on the flip side, I can see why, because I believe this is the best time in human history. This has to be the easiest time to become an entrepreneur, right? But I don't want to give any spoilers, so I want us to start getting into the pros and the cons of this. All right, so let's just dive right in. All right, cons. On my number one for cons of becoming an entrepreneur is uncertainty. And I'll tell you why uncertainty. Well, this is not in any particular order, right? But let's get into uncertainty. So, according to the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just going over my notes here, right? So, according to the Chamber of Commerce, chamberofcommerce.org, on average, 4.7 million businesses are started every year in the United States. Of that number, 45% of them fail in the first 5 years. 65% of them fail by year 10. Now, here's what's crazy. 18% of those businesses fail in their first year. All right, so let's talk about uncertainty. When you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, these stats, these numbers are the things that you want to really consider, because I think that this is a summary of what entrepreneurship is, basically, right? So forget what you see on social media, forget what you see on Instagram. This is the actual truth. These are the facts. Numbers don't lie. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. These numbers don't lie, right? So when you think about becoming an entrepreneur, you have to understand that in the same year that you start your business, 45% of the businesses that you start with, like the other people who start with you that same year, on the same day, same hour, 45% of those businesses would be gone, dead in the water in 5 years. Like, those businesses were shut down. So when they say fail, non-existent, gone. They're gone. They failed. Because you can't fail unless you stop, right? Unless you close up shop. If half of those businesses are going to close up shop in the next 5 years. So half of the people you start with, gone. In 10 years, 65% of the people you started with, gone. Now, doesn't mean 35% of them become successful. Actually, I think the number is 15% of businesses started in the US become successful. I think that's what the number is, 15 or 20%, but I'm pretty sure it's 15% of them become successful. A good amount of them linger around for a little longer than 10 years, and eventually they go, you know what? I'm out, right? But the uncertainty of entrepreneurship, for me, is one of its cons, right? Are you going to be one of the 45% that goes down after 5 years? Or are you going to be one of the 65% that puts 10 years in only to realize, well, shoot, it just didn't work? Or even worse, are you going to be the 18% that just close up shop after the first year? I think of the 18% that close up shop after the first year, like people who maybe try to transition from, a day job into entrepreneurship, and then they realize you never clock out, right? And they just went, screw this. I'd rather go work for somebody and they'd be responsible for my finances as long as I just clock in at 9 a.m., clock out at 5, right? That's how I think about the 18%. Now, obviously, there are other reasons why people close up shop in the first year that they start. But I think the underlying factor there, whether the 18% that close up shop in the first year or the 45% that close up shop in 5 years or the 65 that close up shop in 10 years, the underlying factor there is entrepreneurship is difficult. It is not tough in the sense that, like hard work, like physical labor tough. It is mentally, it is mental toughness. Like, you have to be mentally strong. And so the uncertainty that you could be the 18% or the 45% or the 65%, which I think that is such a hard thing for me to grasp, right? It's putting 10 years into something and waking up one day and going, you know what? After 10 years of trying to make this business work and become profitable, I have decided that since it has not made any money in 10 years, I am going to finally close up shop. That's, for me personally, I can't bring myself to do it. But maybe I'm stupid for that. Who knows? Uncertainty is, man, it has to be my number one, like, biggest con for entrepreneurship. All right, let's go to the next one. Broke. In my notes, I wrote, you'll find yourself broke for a long time because you are reinvesting into the business so it can grow. And that's just the absolute truth with becoming an entrepreneur. In the beginning, right? A lot of these cons, like if you go off of the stats, like you understand that it's the beginning of the entrepreneur phase that's the difficult part. If you don't have a coach, right? These are like, you're starting just on your own and making the experience and going through, the entire journey mostly on your own without any form of coaching at all, right? Broke. I can tell you from my own experience that everybody's gone through that process, and it is the kind of broke that messes with you, because you're not broke because the business is not bringing in money. You are broke because the business is not bringing you money. The business is bringing in money. You're making sales. You are just not making money. The business is, right? Your landlord is making money because your landlord gets paid. You're paying the landlord, you're paying the city for electricity and gas or whatever, you're paying all your vendors. There's just never money left for you, right? So you're always broke, especially in the beginning, because money's coming in, you're reinvested into the business. And in some people's case, because they have a vision and they want to grow their business like as fast as possible, when little profits come in, instead of taking home the profits, they take the profits and reinvest that into business growth, right? So not the business bills, right? Profits come in, expenses are taken care of, there's the extra, and then you take that and invest into the business growth, right? Maybe buy an equipment that would allow the business to do maybe more volume, or put that into customer acquisition, right? To generate more leads than you naturally do at the moment with your current budget. So you're going to find yourself broke a lot. And I cannot tell you how much that can affect somebody. If I'm being honest, my marriage didn't work out because I was broke. Just flat out, I'll be honest. It didn't work out because I was broke. I was not able to take care of my financial responsibilities, right? And that affected the dynamic in the marriage, and it just led to the death of the marriage, right? Now, maybe other things led to it, sure. But I know that being broke was a huge part of that, basically, right? So as a new entrepreneur, as a beginning entrepreneur, in the beginning, you are going to find yourself broke a lot of times. I actually remember a story, and I hope I get it right. Alex Hormozi was told about when he took all the money from his credit card to start his gym, probably for like the third time, because he got, these former partners stole his money, and he went through it. But he had taken all the money he had left on his credit card to open up this gym, and he would sleep at the gym because he didn't have a place to go, right? Like, he didn't have an apartment. Mind you, not because he didn't have money, because he could have just got an apartment, whatever money he just put into the gym. But he put all of that money into the gym and decided he was going to sleep at the gym, like literally sleep on the floors and shower at the gym. And he wouldn't have to get up and go to work because he's already at work, right? And he'd do that over a long period of time, taking all of the money that was coming in and reinvesting into the business and growing the business. Now, while he was doing that, I hope I'm getting the story right. I think he mentioned something about, like, so like his employees at the time, I would guess he didn't have like many or something. Like they'd come to work and like realize that the boss is sleeping at work. Like that's where he lives. Like he sleeps there. Now these are not like his words, but this is what I understood from his story, right? Like they would kind of like not look down on him, but like how you feel like, oh, like the boss doesn't have a an apartment or like a home. He has to like sleep here, and it's just uncomfortable for you as the entrepreneur. Now, for people who are super locked in, they could care less, right? Like I can relate to Alex Hormozy so much that because I'm that type of way. Like when I'm tunnel vision, right? Like when I have a goal, I could care less what you think about how I'm living. I live at the gym, sure, right? But here's what's crazy about being broke in the beginning. It doesn't make any sense because there's money coming in because he obviously has employees, but he's having to live at the gym. So it's not broke in the sense that he doesn't see any money at all. It's just he doesn't see money that he could take home. And he is so tunnel vision that he's just going to take all the money coming in, reinvest it into the business, and grow it to the point where the business could run, pay its expenses, take care of him, and still have enough to allocate to business growth, right? And so that's my second con. I got to start speeding through these cons. The third one is time. It will take all of your time and you would have none to give to your family and friends. This is probably one of the things that I feel is not talked about a lot in entrepreneurship is how much time it is going to take from you. Like entrepreneurship is the jealous girlfriend that does not let you spend time even with your family or your friends. She wants your attention 24/7. Like she is the girlfriend that would probably fake a broken ankle if you took one day away from the business. Like I remember like in the beginning for me, I would always be mad because I always say everything that can everything that could go south always goes south on a Monday morning. Like I always in the beginning, like I would be anxious on Sunday over getting to my business on Monday. Because I just felt like I'm going to get there and I'm going to find something. Like something is going to be broken Monday morning. And sure enough, like clockwork, I promise you, either I get there and it was already broken before I got there, or while I'm there, something goes wrong, right? Either a vendor just quits on you or, you know, this money you're owing to a vendor or supplier or whatever you want to call it, they're like, listen, if you don't pay today, that's it. It's a wrap. We're not doing business anymore. And in that moment, that person is a critical part of like your business. So you're freaking out and like it's all of this craziness, right? But I used to dread Mondays. So I'd spend all of my Sunday worrying about Mondays. So my Sundays were not really Sundays. It wasn't like a rest day for me. It was a have anxiety about Monday day. That was my Sunday. But one of the cons of entrepreneurship is it is going to take time from you. I know I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs complain about how entrepreneurship or, they're giving all of their time to their business destroyed their relationship, destroyed their marriages. Actually, I had one of my and this is such a it's man, I was really sad when he told me this story. So one of my business associates, we do business together in the textile recycling world. And him and I, recently just got, closer. And he was opening up to me about, so his wife was diagnosed with, some form of cancer, bone cancer. And she's undergone, I think, 2 or 3 surgeries now. And I was on the phone with him, and he said to me, he said, "Yeah, Roland, you have to draw the line at some point on how much you are willing to give to this thing that you're chasing." Because, and he said to me, he said, "You remind me of myself so much when I was younger. I'm just super laser focused, and I just go, 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 and give all of my time and energy to this thing that I'm building." He said, "My wife said to me recently," she looked at me and said, she basically said to him, like, he took all of her good years from her, like her fun years from her, because he just wanted to focus on the business. He was just business, 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 and never gave her time, like in their marriage, to go out and do all the fun stuff, like while they were like young, because he was just laser focused on this thing that he was building for them. But there was no gray area, where he was going, all right, I have to, like, no matter what, I got to give time to this. And and by this I meant my marriage. And so he was advising me and said, he said, "Roland, you have to absolutely draw the line somewhere. If not, you're going to end up in my position." And in that moment, I realized that that is one of, if not, the biggest cons of entrepreneurship, is the time it takes from you. Like, it takes a lot of time from you if you are going to be successful, especially when you don't have a coach and a mentor, right, to mentor you and guide you through the time that they've already sacrificed. Because here's the good, and I'm going to chase rabbits with this one, but that's fine, because my goal is to help you guys. It's not to talk to you. The goal of this podcast is to help you, right? And as we talk about time, I can't help but think again about the value of coaching and mentorship, because if person A has already made the time sacrifice, why do you want to make the exact same sacrifice when you can just pay them to coach you, so you don't have to spend the exact amount of time building the same thing? Let's take this business partner, right? He's talking to me, about this, and he coaches me through a lot of stuff. Because in my industry, I love to listen to a lot of the older guys in my industry. And truth be told, that's 99% of my industry. I'm the youngest person that I have met in my industry. Well, at the level that I'm operating in, I'm the youngest of all of them, right? Everyone I talk to, they're in the youngest, they're like early 50s to like, and up, really. Early 50s and up, right? Why would I spend time? Why would I spend the same amount of time that he spent, that his wife is now complaining about? Why would I make the exact same sacrifice to get the exact same results as he did, right? He finally got to the result. He learned how to, when you get to a result, you learn how to get to that result faster, right? Because really, what The 7 years it took you to get to the result does not mean it takes 7 years to get that thing done. It just means it took you 7 years to figure out how to get that thing done. It probably takes 15 minutes to get that thing done, or an hour or 2 days. Doesn't take 7 years to get anything done. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't even take, I don't even think it takes 7 years to build a freaking skyscraper, right? So it doesn't take 7 years to get anything done in your business. It took 7 years for you to learn or figure out how to do that thing. So why would I sacrifice 7 years of time with my family over just getting a coach or a mentor who would just coach me through the process and save me 7 years? All right, I'm done chasing rabbits with that one, but time is the next con for me. Moving on to the next one will be competition. You constantly have to innovate and adapt just so your competition does not clean you out. That's another con of entrepreneurship, right? And again, let's think about these cons like the effort that you put in. So it's the thing that entrepreneurship takes from you. And then the pros would be the thing that what entrepreneurship gives you back, right? And so far, we've seen uncertainty, delayed. Oh, I'm going to get to this one. All right. But let's do competition. You constantly have to innovate and adapt just so your competition does not clean you out. When I think about that, in my industry, this is what it looks like, right? And you can just take that and apply it to whatever business it is that you're starting or you want to start. But in my industry, the competition is so crazy, right, that sometimes people would, like, your competition will call you and pretend to be a buyer. Like, they would literally call my phone, pretend to buy a load just so they know what my prices are. Like, that's how crazy it is. And you start going through this, like, when people feel like you got the recipe right, right? And so people, and have I done that before? Yes. That's why I think of entrepreneurship as a sport, right? It's a competition. It is a competition, right? You always want to be like on your P's and Q's, right? So like constantly innovating and adapting your strategies. It's never ending, like never ever ending. It's like looking over your shoulders, but not looking over your shoulders, because if you are naturally a creative and that is the space, and whatever business you choose to operate, like that is a business that you devote your time to, which is dangerous. We talked about it, but you devote a healthy amount of time to, right? And you love doing that, right? You're enjoying doing it. It's not a chore. You won't look over your shoulder as much because you just think about that business in a different light than most people would do. And so innovation comes easier to you than most people, right? Like in my industry, I feel like innovation comes easier to me than, like most people in my industry, because I obsess about it, right? I think about it day and night. I never stop thinking about it. And all I'm thinking about is how to make our processes better, like how to make everything that we do. Like I question everything that already existed before I even got into the industry, right? I question whether or not it could get better, and if it can, how? And I try to figure out the how, try to implement it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I take it out, ask questions, try to innovate, right? But everybody else has to, especially the people whose businesses are dependent on, I think about it this way. The people who copy the innovators are usually in trouble, right? So when we talk about like competition, they generally feel the competition more, because you can copy the strategy of an innovator, but you cannot copy the innovator, right? So you can copy the strategies that I come up with. You can copy the strategies that I come up with, but you cannot copy me, the mind that comes up with those strategies. What that means is I would always be ahead of you because you always have to wait for me to get the idea, implement the idea, then it works, and then you copy it to implement it. So you're always going to come second to me, right? And that's a vulnerable position to be because you can only do that for so long until I intentionally pretend to come up with a strategy that would tank your operation, right? Not that I'll do that. I usually don't care, but it's important to mention that because there are people out there that take, their position or their market share very seriously. And they would go to any lengths to make sure that anybody coming even close to taking a fraction of that market share is dead in the water, right? So you don't want to be the one that's always copying innovation. If you find yourself doing that all the time and you cannot be innovative in your industry, you're probably in the wrong industry. I 1000% believe that everybody is innovative in an industry, right? Some people, multiple industries, right? But everybody has at least one industry that they can be innovative in. If you find that the thing that you're doing right now, you're unable to be innovative in that, maybe that's just not the industry you should be in, right? So competition is going to be one of them. The last con for me is going to be, we're running out of time quickly. The last con for me is going to be delayed gratification. You're going to have to miss celebrations, vacations, good food, good sleep, boys' night out, girls' night out. You're going to have to miss all of that in the beginning when you're chasing this thing, this goal, whether it's a financial goal or performance goal. But that is what entrepreneurship takes from you. The vacation, I remember vividly with my brothers. So anybody who knows me I hate pepperoni pizza. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like to eat it. And I hate Little Caesars pizza. This is not to bash Little Caesars. I just don't like their pizza, right? There's obviously a reason why it's cheap. Now, the only pizza that Little Caesars has for $5 is their pepperoni pizza. It's a one-topping pizza, pepperoni pizza. You can get it for $5. In the beginning stages of forming our business, we were so broke that we would literally scrape together quarters, whatever we could find to go across the street, because there's a Little Caesars across the street from us. Go across the street, get a box of Little Caesars pizza and a 2-liter pop. Bring that home and eat that for the day. We were living on one meal per day. And it was a Little Caesars large pepperoni pizza. I had to eat what was available, not what I wanted. I hated Little Caesars pizza. Doesn't freaking matter. That's all I got, right? Your friend's having a wedding, but you get to your work. Let's say in my industry, textile recycling. Water and used textiles don't go together. That's like water and oil. Never mix them. That's a remedy for mold. Your bales are moldy, they're done. Trash that. All right. So you don't water anywhere close to your bales. I remember one Monday morning, got to work. It had rained over the weekend, got to work. We had probably about $40-some thousand worth of textiles just ruined, wet. We walked in, there was water on the floor. Everything was wet because the roof was leaking everywhere. 40-something thousand dollars worth of inventory, gone. This is in the beginning. Like, we couldn't afford to lose the money. This is when we were eating $5 pizzas, sharing $5 pizza per day. You walk in and $40,000 worth of inventory gone. If your friend was having a wedding on that day that you had to attend, you tell me what you're going to do. Go to the wedding or figure out what you're going to do next. You're done. Wedding, that's done for you. Can't go. Go do what? Go ha-ha and kiki with people who don't have the problem that you have? Because you can go ha-ha and kiki, they go back to their okay life or even great life. And then you have to go deal with the problem that's waiting for you. I don't like problems waiting. I fix the problem right away. I don't like to do tomorrow what I can do today. Nope. Or do later what I can do now. No. I got to fix it now, right? Delayed gratification, or the girls' night out, the boys' night out, you're going to have to watch your friends post on their Snapchat and their Instagram reels, on vacation somewhere in Rome, or in Greece or in Vegas or whatever. And even though you know that you could just take money from the business right now and go on that vacation because the business can afford it, but you cannot afford it. Well, the business technically cannot afford it because the business needs that money to pay its bills. So the business cannot afford it and you cannot afford it. But not to say that the money is not there. It's just the money is not there for you and the vacation. It's there for the landlord and the light bill and the gas bill and the vendors. Delayed gratification. You will have to miss out on eating your favorite foods, miss out on going out with your friends, miss out sometimes on hanging out with your family, miss out on vacations, miss out on celebrations, miss out on new music, right? You don't even know Drake's latest single or album at that point. I promise you, I've easily not listened to Drake's last 2 albums. I don't want to make this about that. But delayed gratification, huge con. But you must be aware that if you are, and all of these cons, I'm going to call it what it is. All of these cons that I mentioned are for the people who do entrepreneurship right. Now, minus the coaching and mentorship, right? Because that'd be the people who do it excellent. But these cons are going to affect the people who do it right. Because the people who do it wrong, the business just folds like anyway, right? You start taking money from the business, whatever money is coming in, it's supposed to go to the business expenses. You start taking that, using it for personal use. You're either going to get evicted by your landlord or you're not going to have any vendors anymore. But something's going to break beyond your ability to fix it, right? Delayed gratification, broke time, competition, and what else did we say? Uncertainty. Those are my cons. Now, let's go over to the pros. Number 1 pro of entrepreneurship. Let's get serious here because this is facts and this is truth. Financial freedom. And in my notes, I wrote, you become financially free and don't have to look over your shoulder every day wondering if you can pay your bills next month or not. I cannot tell you how big this is. And it's not just it's to most people, because I bet you everybody watching this video right now and everybody listening to this podcast right now wants financial freedom. You want financial freedom. You want the ability to not have to think about or have anxiety over where your rent is going to come from next month, or if you're going to have it. I've been there. It's after a while, it becomes exhausting, just mentally and just physically exhausting. Most people have anxiety when you use the word buy or pay around them because they're not financially free. They literally have to think about every single expenditure because their paycheck from the 9 to 5 was already gone before it arrived. That was gone before it arrived. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying entrepreneurs don't experience this. But when we're talking about the cons, remember we're talking about the reward, right? So after you've put in the effort, the reward that you get, is it worth the effort? So meaning when you make it past the 5 years and you survive and you become like profitable, right? The reward that entrepreneurship gives you is what we're looking at as the pros, right? Financial freedom, the ability to not worry, the ability to not have anxiety because your child or your partner said something about buy, or they used the word buy, or somebody said pay. You know that right now, as you're watching this video, most of the people watching this video, the word buy and the word pay gives you anxiety. Maybe for some people it's not as bad, right? But I'm here to talk to people who, for them, it is that bad. And they are owning up to the fact that it is. Because the only way you're going to get better is to accept your reality, which is I get anxious about bills. I get anxious when I hear the word buy or pay. Because my paycheck is not even enough to support my lifestyle. And the crazy part is it's not even getting better, especially in this economy. Things are a lot pricier than they were even just 3 years ago. It's not going to get better, by the way. Right? Financial freedom. That's my number one pro of entrepreneurship. Next is freedom of time. In my notes, I wrote, you are free to spend your time as you please. No more grumpy days because you have to go and clock in and give your time to a boss you don't like doing something that you don't enjoy doing. That's what entrepreneurship rewards you with. Freedom of time. The freedom to spend time with the people that you care about. The freedom to give time to the things that you love. The freedom to choose who gets your time. The freedom to not be around people who make you anxious, like a boss you really don't want to see, or people you don't want to talk to. Freedom of time. You now get to decide how you spend your time, how you spend your day. Freedom of time, that is huge, and that is so underrated. But if you want freedom of time, entrepreneurship is the answer. When it comes to freedom of time, let's just call a spade and call it what it is. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? I stand to be corrected, but I don't see any other way to achieve freedom of time outside of entrepreneurship. I just don't. I don't see you achieving freedom of time working a 9 to 5. Doesn't matter what your job is or what your position is. There is no eventually getting to freedom of time. There is no your job rewards you with freedom of time. Doesn't exist. Only entrepreneurship rewards you with freedom of time. So if freedom of time is what you are looking for in your life at this moment, as you watch this video, as you listen to this podcast, I want you to consider making the transition into entrepreneurship at some point. Maybe you're 65, maybe you're older. You're watching this video, you're listening to the podcast, and you work a 9 to 5, and you go, well, Rolland, I enjoy my job. I've enjoyed it for the last 35 years, yada, yada. Listen, I understand. I get you. And to be honest, I admire you and I respect you, because people like you are the reason why we can have thriving businesses, or we can even have a business at all, right? Because it's the people who dedicate a huge amount of their time to working on your vision to bring it to life. I respect the hell out of you. That being said, all I'm asking is that at some point in life, please, just try it out. If you hate it, go back to your 9 to 5. At some point in life, transition to entrepreneurship, because I think you have paid your dues. You have earned it, and it's time for you to have freedom of time. Freedom to give time to your partner, who you haven't given time to in a while because you had to go to work. And even on the day that they said you were supposed to be off, they called you in because somebody didn't show up. I want you to experience true freedom of time. And there is no freedom of time at any point outside of entrepreneurship. That is the second pro for me. The third one is freedom of choice. And I wrote, you are no longer in a vulnerable position where you have to accept what you are given, but you can now choose where you want to live, where you want to raise your kids, what you want to drive, who you want to date, what you want to eat. Freedom of choice is so underrated. But that is such a huge part of the pros of entrepreneurship, like for me. Because we can take it back to the pizza story I told you guys with the Little Caesars pizza. Today, I don't have to eat a $5 pepperoni Little Caesars pizza because I don't like it. I can just go eat a steak because I feel like eating steak. I don't have to live in an apartment in the hood like I used to, right? I did in Moorhead, Minnesota, because that's all I could afford. I didn't have a choice. Dangerous or not, who cares? Oh, I heard gunshots the other day. Who cares? You can't afford to live anywhere else anyway. Or freedom of choice this way. I always say this, even as entrepreneurs, like in the beginning, you can know the right thing and not be able to afford the right thing. I'll give you an instance. Having an employee who is great at their job, but their communication sucks, and they have been subordinate multiple times, but you cannot afford to fire them because you cannot afford to actually pay people what they would normally charge you in this economy to do that job. And so you have to stick with this person who you know is not right for your company and your business, but because that's all you can afford right now, you don't have a choice. So you can know the right thing to do, which is fire them right now, but not do it, not because you don't know it's the right thing to do. It's because you cannot afford to do the right thing yet. You don't have a choice. But entrepreneurship, when entrepreneurship rewards you with freedom of choice, changes your life. Freedom of choice is so underrated, but I'm telling you, fulfillment, I believe, comes from the ability to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, and in what fashion you want to do it. Because no matter what the result, of your choice, your decision is, you are fine because it was your choice, not because that's all you had, not because you didn't have an option. You are content, right? Contentment comes from freedom of choice. That's what I believe. Contentment comes from freedom of choice, because regardless of what the result of my decision is, I'm fine with that. I'm at peace with that. I'm content because I chose that. Next pro is discipline. Inevitably, what you get from entrepreneurship is discipline. You become more disciplined in your life. You understand the value in setting goals and sticking to the plan. You know why? Because you have faced the consequences of not sticking to the plan and not setting goals multiple times through your entrepreneurial journey. And so when you make it out of the storm and you get over to the blue skies, part of the pros is you become more disciplined. Just naturally. You don't even do anything. You just notice that you make plans now and you stick to it. You set goals. It's because you've done it over and over and over again through the journey of entrepreneurship that it is now a part of you. And so people start to admire it and say, oh my God, you're so disciplined, X, Y, and Z. And you're going, yeah, I guess. But not because you were looking for discipline. You didn't go into entrepreneurship trying to become more disciplined. Well, maybe now you would after you've watched this video. But for the most part, that's not why you went into entrepreneurship. But that is part of the reward that you get when you make it to the other side. You become more disciplined. Next is solution-minded. You inevitably become more solution-minded because your experience in entrepreneurship is, if I don't figure out the solution, nobody else is going to come figure it out for me. Nobody's coming to save you, right? I'll tell you a quick story. I obviously, have a textile recycling business with my brothers, like whatever. We're all different, different personalities, different characters, put them all together to start a business. It's a shit show. We have a load going out this one day, right? And the truck driver is backing into our loading dock with an 18-wheeler, and it's a pretty tight space. But he was backing in, and he ran into our electrical, and it shut off the whole electricity in the entire warehouse. Like, boom, like he smashed, I don't know what he smashed, but shut off the whole electricity. Now, 3 of my brothers were out, by the dock with the driver trying to get him backed up. And I was in the warehouse taking inventory of the load that was supposed to go out just to make sure everything was right, as it was reflected on the invoice. All of a sudden, I hear screaming from the dock. It's one of my brothers literally trying to beat up the driver because he backed in to our electricals and shut it off. I get there, 2 brothers are literally holding back one brother because he is mad and going off on the driver and going, how the F do you expect me to pay for blah, 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 blah. Look what you did, yada, yada. Like, his go-to right away is, I'm going to beat your ass because you just messed up my electricals and now I got to figure it out. So I come out there and I see what's going on and I am livid. So they're holding him back from beating up the driver and he's yelling. Now I start yelling at him, and this is what I'm yelling at him. I'm going, what the freak is wrong with you? Like, why'd you want to beat him up because he was backing in and ruined the electrical? How does that get this load out of here today? Because what we really have to do is get this load out. You're worried about beating somebody up when after you beat them up, this load is still going to be here and it's still going to need to go out. So instead of worrying about what has happened, why didn't you just pick up the phone and call an electrician to get over here and cut the lights back on so we can actually load this container? Because we only get 2 free hours with this driver being here. Every other hour is costing us money. So I don't know if we want to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours beating him up, but after you do that, the bales are not going to load themselves. They still need to be loaded, and this load still has to go out. And so I think everything you're doing right now is absolutely foolish. This is pointless. So I walked away, picked up my phone, called an electrician, and in 5 minutes, because the electrician, this particular electrician whose number I had, they're just like 5 minutes away from our location. Called him on the phone. He was there in 10 minutes and took him probably about 10, 15 minutes. Boom, he had everything back on. Lights came on and we loaded the truck. Lesson there is, as an entrepreneur, when a problem shows up, I do not care how you feel about the problem. How you feel about the problem is irrelevant. Skip that and get to the solution now. Don't be my one brother who's trying to beat up the driver for backing into the electrical. Because after you do that, you will still have to load that truck. So why waste time beating him up when you can just call an electrician with that time and energy, get them over, they cut the lights back on, and you load that truck. And then you can figure out what the driver, the logistics company owes you for whatever you paid the electrician. Here's what's crazy. When the electrician came, when I called him and he came and cut the lights back on, he didn't charge me anything for it at all. He literally didn't charge me for it. He just called it on and was like, Rolland, it's fine. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that hard. So he just came, cut it. It took him like 15 minutes to cut the lights back on, right? So my brother would rather be fighting than being solution-minded. To my point, what you get as a reward when you make it to the other side, right, from entrepreneurship is solution-mindedness. You encounter so much problems because entrepreneurs are problem solvers, right? You have solved so many problems that you have inevitably learned to not focus on the problem when it shows up, to just identify the problem and go straight to solution. I always say, if you mention a problem the first time, you are identifying the problem. When you mention the problem the second time, you are reminding me of the problem. But when you mention the problem the third time, you are making excuses with the problem. I usually only want to hear about problems one time. I don't need a reminder of the problem. I don't have amnesia. I'm just saying how I talk to my partners, right? Especially my brother, my one brother. I always tell him, I don't want to hear about problems more than one time. Stop talking to me about problems. If you don't have a solution, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't want to hear it. That's who you become when you make it to the other side of entrepreneurship. And I like it, right? Because you become more useful to the people around you, to your community, to your society. Because when a problem arises, you go straight to solution, and people love people who are just always positive and solution-minded, right? And so even though you didn't go into entrepreneurship looking to become that, it's the natural evolution that you go through, right? And you become this person that is just always solution-minded because Your brain has done that just over and over and over and over and over again. It's just muscle memory at that point. Problem arises, you don't dwell on it, you just go straight for solution. Now, the next pro on my list is brave. You inevitably learn how to assess and take more risks after you mature as an entrepreneur. Because obviously, every investment is a risk, right? But because you have learned that success as an entrepreneur will require you to fail and fail fast, you do take calculated risks, but you take risks a lot. There are going to be days where the solution that you have to come up with does not fix all of the problems. You just have to decide with your solution which problem you were fine with lingering. Sometimes, and I'll give you an instance, you may have two vendors or a vendor and your landlord. Both want money today. You can only pay one of them. Now, it's risky regardless to not pay it's risky to not pay the landlord and it's risky to not pay the vendor because you don't pay the vendor, no more supply. You don't pay the landlord, you're evicted. You would have to decide which risk you were willing to live with. Not that your decision was going to fix both, right? And so your decision is going to be a risk because you don't know how it's going to play out. If I say screw the landlord and pay the vendor, what happens? If I say screw the vendor, pay the landlord, what happens, right? So that decision becomes risky no matter which way it swings. But you're going to have to make the decision anyway. It's part of entrepreneurship. You have to, and you can't make it later. You got to make it now, right? Bravery is one of the pros when you make it to the other side, right? It is who you become naturally. Next pro would be wisdom. Your trials and tribulations become wisdom and valuable knowledge. So all of the experiences that you gathered through the storm, when you make it over to the blue skies, those trials and tribulations become wisdom and knowledge. Did you go into entrepreneurship looking for wisdom and knowledge? No. But it is what you inevitably get as a result of becoming an entrepreneur, right? And in today's economy or today's world, where knowledge can be monetized now, well, not just always, you could always monetize knowledge because many people have been doing it for a very long time, but it's just more popular now, right? But and I'm not saying it because of the monetization of knowledge, no. But the pro, why wisdom is a pro, is you become more valuable to your society. You become more valuable to your community. You become more valuable to people, right? I am more valuable to you by way of this podcast because of the experiences that I've made as an entrepreneur that I can share with you. Does that make sense? Had I not made those experiences, I would have nothing to share with you. I would have nothing to teach you. But because I went through the tough time, because I went through the trials, and maybe that's where you are today, right? I can share with you that I have been the guy who had to live on a couple slices of Little Caesars pizza and a couple cups of, Pepsi every day for a very long time, right? I can relate to you and say, I have been in your position. This is what you do to get over it and get over to the other side because that is what I did. I can relate with you and say, this is what you should avoid if you don't want to end up this way, because that is what I did and fell, right? I am now more valuable to you because of my experience. So then now I have a lot more wisdom to share with you. I have knowledge to share with you in form of a mentorship or coaching, right? And that is what entrepreneurship gives you. You inevitably have wisdom as a reward and more knowledge, right? That you can share with your peers, your community, and that makes you just more valuable in general. So, those are all of the pros that I have listed here. Now, that brings us to basically the main question. Is entrepreneurship worth it? The effort. Is the effort worth the reward? In my opinion, for me, the effort is worth the reward. I think even the first three rewards that I mentioned, freedom, financial freedom, freedom of time, and freedom of choice, even just those three dwarf all of the effort. Those three make it worth it. Like, no matter what entrepreneurship takes from me, right? Because when we explore the cons, we explored all the things that it take from you, like time, like relationships, like all that. Those are tough. They are. Make no mistake. I'm not here to make them look like they're not huge losses, right? But I think the reward that you get at the end of that outweighs the effort, right? Or outweighs the downside, what it takes from you in order to get you over to that point. So that is my opinion on entrepreneurship and if it's worth it. But let me know in the comments what you think. Going over the pros and the cons, what do you think? Is it worth it to start a business? Is it worth it to become an entrepreneur? Is it worth, putting in all of that time, losing, sacrificing all of that for freedom of time, financial freedom, and freedom of choice, and bravery, and discipline and wisdom? Do you feel like that reward is worth the effort that you're going to have to put in and the sacrifice that you're going to have to make? So let me know in the comments what you think. I think it's more than worth it. And I think that there is no better time to become an entrepreneur than today, because today it is a lot easier to become an entrepreneur and succeed as an entrepreneur than any time in human history. And after this time, we are going back to hard times, because after the easiest time is back to hard time. And I think we are right now in the easiest time. In the era of artificial intelligence, we are living in the easiest time to become entrepreneurs, and there is no better time than this. And for me, the reward from it, from entrepreneurship, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely is worth the effort and the sacrifice. But you let me know what you think in the comments. Like, comment, share with a friend. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell notification so you can be notified every time I drop another episode. All right? Bye for now. I'll see you guys on the next episode. I'm out. Peace.